In the woke mob, you'll acquire advanced skill training in how to forego nuanced thinking, communicating via emotional volatility, virtue signaling, peaceful protesting, mouth breathing, and elite level training in letting your group do your thinking for you. Are you ready for the woke mob? Would you like to ruin people's careers so they can't feed their children anymore? Would you like the opportunity to hurt innocent people? Are you ready to serve your community the way cancer serves the body? Do you have what it takes? Many are called, few are chosen, and the few scream louder than the many. Come scream with us, the few, the proud, the woke.
Wow, the advertisements for the U.S. military are getting pretty out of hand there, don't you say? Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. Now, I knew they were desperate for recruits, but that desperate? Anyway, lots of important news to get into right now with a very explosive article by the Associated Press that we're going to be breaking down that has a lot of implications, especially for locked down states and governments all around the world. And it looks like there was a very interesting spat between U.S. President Joe Biden and, of course, Russian President Vladimir Putin that we're going to be talking about extensively in the context of our modern American foreign policy. But before we do that, plus a lot more, we just wanted to remind people that there's a very big divide and conquer agenda unfolding on the American public right now. A lot of people are unsuspecting of it, as a major verified social media account is now unabashedly referring to a whole group of individuals because of the way they were born as a, quote, pandemic. Yeah, referring to a whole group of people because of the way they were born as a disease is probably not something that should be normalized and promoted, curated by the big tech social media algorithms that are A-okay with this, but Dr. Seuss books, better watch out. But lying about the tragedy that unfolded in Georgia in order to fit your race-baiting divide and conquer agenda, yeah, since of course this wasn't a race-related event. I have a lot more I want to specifically say about this topic, which I'm going to be talking about on LukeUncensored.com. Lots of topics that I want to discuss here are not safe to discuss on YouTube, and sadly the bigger truths here are being totally obfuscated. Just like the journalists that are being obfuscated along with lawyers and lawmakers from being able to see exactly what's happening at the border, since many experts in the field are calling it a crisis unfolding right now on the United States-Mexican border. The White House is denying this, and at the same time denying journalists and lawyers access to it. You know, they could easily prove it's not a crisis on the border, but they refuse to do so. We talked about this topic just yesterday in full detail. And just before we continue again, LukeUncensored.com, 50 cents a day to get exclusive content only for members of WeAreChange.org, which you could sign up by going to LukeUncensored.com right now. I just released my full speech from Acapulco. There will be a very important in-depth video later on tonight, and I don't even want to mention the topics I'm going to be talking about. Just trust me, it's going to be a very big and important one. And by signing up, you help us continue to be free, to be independent, and to expand this media operation and step things up a notch. Plus, it's very refreshing being able to speak without any filters, without any censors, without anyone standing in the way of me being able to fully express myself, and I'm able to do that now because of LukeUncensored.com, and I can't thank you guys enough for it. You guys are really enjoying the videos. I'm enjoying doing them, and I'm so happy we're able to do this. Now, if you remember, a very long time ago, we have always took a very principled position on this independent media organization, and that is that government intervention usually makes things very bad, and usually a lot worse than they originally were. It's of course one of the stances that we took in early 2020, reminding people that if the government gets involved, that they start locking people down. It's a stance that we took early on last year, reminding people that if the government gets involved, if they start locking people down, that this most likely will lead to more people getting hurt. And today we have a bombshell article from the Associated Press that finally admitted that we were right, as they have an article detailing how infections and deaths are nearly identical despite drastically different approaches in states like Florida and, of course, California. And it's not even the Associated Press that admitted this today. It's also CNN. Yes, I never thought I would say this, but CNN inadvertently admitted that they were totally wrong. If you remember, early on, they were screaming about the horror, the death, the pain and suffering that the Florida governor would cause if, of course, he got rid of lockdowns and tedious restrictions on people's average lives. And now CNN ran a headline: a year into this, Florida is booming, and Republican Governor Ron DeSantis is taking credit. After, of course, previously running headlines that he faces criticisms over, of course, putting politics in front of lives. And it wasn't just CNN, it was many media organizations that were utterly attacking the state of Florida, its government, its people, Florida man himself. And now we have two major institutional pillars of the mainstream media, the Associated Press and CNN today, admitting that Florida did the right thing. Now again, you didn't need to be a rocket scientist to tell you this. We were telling you this months ago. And the AP writes, quote, despite the differing approaches, California and Florida have experienced almost identical outcomes. And then they ask, how have two states that took such divergent tracks arrived at similar points? This is also in context to, of course, numbers going down dramatically after, of course, the inauguration of Joe Biden. But we have to understand the only difference in the approach between the California and the Florida government is, of course, the California government destroyed a huge sector of its private business, created a lot of human suffering, engulfed an entire mental health crisis, and essentially on many levels destroyed the lives and livelihoods of countless numbers of its own citizenry that were the ones actually getting hurt, which should have been talked about in larger context, just like all the hypothetical hurt that allegedly the governor of Florida was creating. But it's not. But hey, that's why we have independent media that is usually censored and downranked in the algorithm and you could never find in the search results. Now, the AP also makes a connection between Connecticut and South Dakota as examples of states that did the worst regarding the numbers. And yet again, they still had two different approaches. One, of course, hurting social economic well-being, while the other allowing people to put their own faith in their own hands, which should have been the approach from the very beginning, especially after learning all the lessons that we have learned, especially after the fact, especially when we're seeing all the numbers. And according to the Associated Press, all the restrictive measures that governments took amounted to essentially no difference. Now, this is huge news. This deserves to be everywhere. People need to learn this very important lesson that's being acknowledged right now, and they're not, as the state of California just announced that they have a new rule, new regulation, new restriction, saying that people are no longer allowed to scream on roller coasters. I kid you not, the California Attractions and Parks Association is now behind a plan to try to open roller coasters, but only if people don't scream on them. Other countries are even taking more restrictive, insane, Orwellian Big Brother actions that should be actively criticized. And that, of course, is the country of Israel that just passed a law that will be mandating, quote, freedom tracking bracelets. Now, they're calling this the freedom bracelet because we're living in a 1984 Orwellian society with, of course, complete doublespeak, where now average day people who are not criminals are treated like convicted convicts and felons that literally are forced to have an ankle bracelet or now a wrist bracelet around their arms so the Israeli government could track every single movement that they make. Now, it's important to note here that some U.S. agencies already track where every American citizen goes with, of course, surveillance technology within people's cell phones, but this is yet on just another absolutely ridiculous level that most likely the AP and CNN will come out with an article 12 months from now telling you is absolutely pointless, a big waste of money, and a huge danger towards people's civil liberties. Because, of course, a lot of these restrictions are put in by politicians who don't follow them themselves. As a major Biden administration member, John Kerry was just caught on an airline filled with a lot of people violating the CDC mandate that he himself has been calling for other people to follow. The reports are coming in that John Kerry, after immediately boarding a flight between Boston to DC, perfectly exemplified how the elites could do whatever the hell they want, and that rules only apply to the poor peasants, not to the ultra-wealthy individuals that usually fly private and lecture us about climate change. Now, this is important because many flights have been turned around, some flights have been canceled, people have been kicked off, people have been put on no-fly lists for entire airlines for doing what John Kerry is pictured doing here. I mean, babies have been removed from airplanes for not having a mask for more than 30 seconds, and this is just yet another example of many politicians being able to do whatever they want. Now, moving on to the next topic, it definitely looks like there's some very interesting fireworks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and, of course, U.S. President Joe Biden, as, of course, on an ABC interview, U.S. President Joe Biden just said that the Russian president would, quote, pay the price for meddling in U.S. elections, and that he personally told the Russian president that, quote, he didn't believe he had a soul and that he was a killer. Now, according to Biden, Russian President Vladimir Putin responded with, we finally understand each other, which could have been done sarcastically or as a joke, because as you're going to see, Putin does usually speak in jest as his official response here to, of course, Joe Biden seen in this video. Quote, and what would my answer be? I would tell him, I wish you good health. I am saying it without irony or jokes. As, of course, it looks like he's smiling, bringing attention to, of course, what many people believe to be the cognitive decline of the current sitting president of the United States. Now, it's also important to point out that this entire dialogue that was started by Joe Biden was against paying the price for meddling in U.S. elections, even though there's many U.S. intelligence agencies that have come out and contradicted the U.S. president and said that there was no Russian meddling in, of course, the U.S. election. Could this be why Vladimir Putin, from this entire conversation, brought up Joe Biden's health? Who knows? But the situation between Russia and the United States is, of course, going to continue to be heated. You could bet your bottom dollar there's going to be some more escalated tensions and proxy conflicts in the world because of this rising tension. But it is important to note here that it does seem as if Putin is trying to use dry humor and wit in order to try to lighten up this very tense situation. After, of course, this comment, Vladimir Putin went on also to say it takes one to know one, and then adding, quote, we always see in other persons our own qualities and think that he is the same as us. And then he also went on and talked about how the United States is the only country that ever used nuclear bombs on another country. So yeah, safe to say that there definitely isn't a love affair between the United States and Russia. Things will definitely get worse. Russia also just recalled one of its ambassadors after Joe Biden said that Putin will pay a price. Iran, a proxy country between Russia and the United States, just warned its citizens to prepare for an attack. The United States is also trying to make sure that China will stop supporting Iran and their oil shipments, which China most likely will ignore. The United States also just sanctioned 24 Chinese and Hong Kong officials, and with other pundits coming out admitting that the United States has already lost to China because of, quote, wokeism and culture wars, I think he definitely has some very interesting context and points to this larger debate of what's actually going on with American foreign policy. And now, in the moments of making this video, by the way, Putin just released a statement where he is challenging Joe Biden to an online debate, saying specifically, I'd like to, quote, offer President Biden to continue our discussions with one condition. We will do it in a live broadcast online without any lags in an open, direct discussion. I believe this could be interesting for the Russian people and the Americans, for other countries as well. Wow. So now we have a challenge on the world stage by a Russian president trying to debate Joe Biden, which Joe Biden, who's been ducking and diving the press, not holding any press conferences, making sure that a large number of issues and actions get unexplained. Biden, who's been ducking the press, most likely will probably deny this request, even though it would be pretty amazing to see a frank, honest conversation between two world leaders actually being able to talk to each other without any form of control, moderation, scripts, and I would love to see this. And if you would love to see this, share this video, share this context with your friends, family members. Who knows? 2021 is absolutely crazy. I don't see Joe Biden doing this, but it would be pretty amazing if it could potentially happen. What do you think would happen during this big debate between Putin and Biden? What issues would you think would get talked about? What larger truths would we find out? Let me know in the comment section below. It's sometimes fun to play this kind of larger hypothetical game. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Go to lukeuncensored.com. I'm going to be releasing more videos later on tonight. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.